Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Toronto Stars Indoor Recess, where we talk about sports while we're indoors because we aren't allowed to play outside. I'm Braydon Holmyard, part of the Stars audience team, and today we're going to cover some early season baseball predictions and answer questions submitted by Jays fans. So in doing that, I'm happy to be joined by our awesome duo covering the Blue Jays for the Star. First, I'll introduce Laura Armstrong, who's entering her fourth season on the Blue Jays beat in her sixth year overall at the Star. How's it going, Laura?
Hey, how's it going? We're here. I'm excited. Let's do this.
Me too. So I've been wondering, how long does it feel like since you were in Florida covering the preseason? And what has that transition back here been like covering a team from home?
It feels like another lifetime. I was just talking about how Mark Shapiro on the last day of, like the first day of the suspension, the last day that I was in Florida covering spring training, said, like, was asked about whether or not he was concerned about the border issues. And he was kind of like, I don't know, like it's too soon to talk about basically. And it just like, that feels like a whole other lifetime ago. If only we had known then what we know now. So it's going to be totally different this year for sure.
It will be different. And also joining us is Toronto Star baseball columnist Gregor Chisholm, who was acquired by the Star in a midseason trade last year. Gregor, congrats on becoming a dad recently.
Thank you.
And I assume your household has gotten a little busier since then. So how has the working on baseball from home situation been for you?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's actually been kind of convenient. I mean, if there's one benefit from our perspective, from this household, anyways, in terms of the pandemic, it's just kind of been nice to be able to be around the house a little bit more and help out. It's a little bit challenging to try and do the journalism side of things while you've got a screaming baby in the background. To work around naps and sleep schedules, but no, it's been great. I mean, I certainly wasn't expected to be around as much as I have been, so it's been one nice little benefit to all this.
Cool. All right, guys. So we're going to get through some predictions. So obviously with a 60-game season, predictions they'll have a harder time sticking probably because anything can happen. A hot or cold streak could make or break a team or a player's season. So let's see where you guys are at. We'll post them online, and then at the end of the season, we'll revisit them. So the way we'll do it is I'll say the thing that we'll go through on the list. Maybe Laura, you can go first, and then Gregor, you can answer after, and we'll just go through all of these here. All right, so we'll start off just on the Blue Jays alone. So number of wins for the Jays this year.
I know people are going like they think they're going to be a 500 team. I don't think so. I think they're going to get 27. That's my number.
All right, Gregor.
I'm usually the pessimist, and I guess I'm going to be really optimistic. I'm going to say they're going to be right around 500. I mean, I think that's where they're going to add. I think they'll be 31-29. So I guess I'll go that one game over.
Right.
But we're going to hover around that mark pretty much all year, which is, I think, originally even in a regular season where we thought it was going to be 162, I think it was going to be somewhat similar. I think they're on a similar track.
You're going to be quoted as saying they'll have a winning record, though, because you went with 31.
There you go. I'm so proud
Mr.
of you,
Rosie
Gregor.
over here. I know, Mr. Rosie.
Okay, do the Blue Jays make the playoffs? I guess
so,
it depends on how many teams.
It depends on how many games. Like, at this point, we still don't know if there's going to be 16 games. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs either way. Apparently, I'm the queen of pessimism. This is, like, usually Gregor's world.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that one. I don't think they're going to get in. I think they do have a decent shot if the playoffs are expanded. I don't think they have much of a shot if it's just going to be the two potentially coming out of the East with a wild card team in there. But if it gets expanded enough, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. We're sitting here on opening day and we don't even know how many playoff teams are going to be in the league in this situation. So, hey, maybe they'll let all 30 teams in and the Jays will make the playoffs that way.
All right, Blue Jays home run leader.
Oh, that's me, right? Oh, sorry. Guys, I went out of the box with this one. I think it's going to be Rowdy Tellez.
Nice. I like that one.
I don't know. Maybe it's just summer training camp has like made me surprised, but I don't know. Grichuk's a streaky guy. I know he led the Jays last year. I'm not sold on Vlad just yet, so I think it might be Rowdy.
Yeah, I'm not picking any of the young guys quite yet either. Same for Vladdy. He's not my pick. To me, it's either between Teoscar Hernandez or Randall Grichuk. I think one of those two guys, probably not both, are going to show up this year. They're very streaky players, so you'll probably get one who catches lightning in the bottle and the other who struggles a little bit. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Teoscar as the guy, but fair warning, I've been picking him for the last couple of years as a bit of a team, and it hasn't really happened yet. So fair warning.
Okay, strikeout leader.
Gregor just said Teoscar Hernandez is going to hit the most home runs, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get the most strikeouts. But maybe he does both, right? Like I could totally see that happening in some way. So Teoscar for me, I think he's going to, if he doesn't hit lightning in a bottle, then I think he's definitely a candidate for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. Either him or Rowdy Tellez probably will be up there too. I mean, this team's still going to strike out a lot. There's going to be like 4 or 5 guys who are going to be at the very top of that list. And then I think pitcher-wise, Nate Pearson would probably be the guy I pick, even though he's going to be down the first week of the season. I mean, the Jays don't have a ton of strikeout guys in that rotation. Thornton potentially is another guy. But I think Pearson, once he gets up here, I mean, even if he struggles a little bit, the strikeouts are going to be there.
Okay, now let's move to this one. Should be interesting. Blue Jays steals leader.
This one doesn't, I don't know why my like initial thought was that the Jonathan Davis was the best base stealer on the Jays. I guess it's just because he just doesn't actually play for the Jays very often. But I'm going to go with Biggio. He was so far ahead of everybody else last year that I think it's got to be him again.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, that's the same pick for me too. I think he doesn't necessarily have the most natural speed in the world. Like you don't think of him as that speedy guy at the top of the lineup, really. But what he is a really smart base runner. So I mean, we saw a bit of that last year. I think he's going to pick and choose his spots pretty well. So I still don't think this is going to be a team that steals a lot of bases. I mean, Anthony Alford coming off the bench will be an option there as well, but he's probably not going to get enough playing time to be the main guy. So I totally agree with Laura.
Okay, so at season's end, who will be leading the team in wins above replacement?
I'm all in on Biggio. I'm all in on him again. I think it's the same thing that Gregor said here. I think he's a smart player. I think he plays the game very intelligently, and I think that's going to help him. I feel like you might have a guy like Bichette who might surprise you, but I'm going to go Biggio again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with too because I mean Biggio's game just really sets up well for WAR. I mean he's a guy who plays into that category. His overall game really kind of matches up well. My pick though is going to be Bichette. I just think that he's going to establish this year as this is being his team. I mean we spent the last couple of years talking so much about Vladimir Guerrero. But it's really Bichette who, in the short time up here, has been the one who's impressed me the most. And I think it's not going to be very long at all before we talk about him as the most well-rounded player on that team, the leader of that team, and the guy who basically is the face of the franchise. Even though the Vladdy's, I mean, still a lot of hype there. But to me, I think Bichette long-term is going to be the guy.
All right, now a few fun ones before we go over to league-wide. So it's a little murky right now, maybe, but by season's end, who will emerge as the setup man in the bullpen?
Listen, I like Dolis. Am I pronouncing that, Gregor, right? I don't even know. That's a terrible thing to say. But I think it's going to be Romano. I think Montoya loves Romano. I don't know if it's necessarily the right decision, but I think that they like this let the kids play sort of vibe, and I think that if he continues throwing as hard as he is, I think he's the one that they're like most excited about.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dolis and Anthony Bass are certainly going to get a lot of high leverage innings, but they're more placeholders than anything else. I mean, we've seen those guys come through this city. Joe Smith. Last year, we saw a few guys come through as well, where they basically just make that 1-year stint with the team. I mean, that's what relievers are all about. That's what those two guys are. I think more long-term, Jordan Romano is still the priority guy. So I think they're going to try and get him as many as possible. And certainly with the uncertainty with Ken Giles, we don't really know where he's going to end up next year. I mean, Romano to me still is a guy who potentially slots in long-term as a future closer. So you want to get him as many of those high leverage innings as you possibly can.
Okay, so this one might be obvious. I'm not sure. When does Nate Pearson join the starting rotation? We know today that he was announced he made the taxi squad.
Mm-hmm. What's the date? I think it's what, July 29th is the day that they are like can bring him up for service time. So like, I think if you count it, it comes out to July 31st if you're going through the rotation. So I'm going to bet on July 31st. In my opinion, he'll definitely be here before August. They bring him up the day they can,
100%.
Yeah.
You have to, especially in this season. I mean, he's going to miss one start. That's essentially all it's going to be. And then he's going to be a mainstay in that rotation. So it's a no-brainer. You miss one start, you get a full extra year of control. Sucks for Nate Pearson, sucks for his future earnings. That's just the reality of the business in Major League Baseball. And if you're running the Blue Jays, it's an absolute no-brainer. If I'm Pearson's agent, I'm still potentially looking into grievances and seeing what I can do, potentially prove that, they are trying to manipulate service time, but that's a really hard thing to do. So he's going to miss one start and then he'll be up.
So this one I wasn't even sure if I should include, but let's go for it. I don't know if there's an obvious answer to this one too. Does Austin Martin play at all this season?
I did bold picks the other day in one of our stories that it's going to come out tomorrow, and I said that he does play this season. Right. I think that's like kind of wild, but I think like between like the depth that they have at third base, like if anything were to happen to Travis Shaw, they could find guys to like fill in that position, but they wouldn't necessarily have a guy who like can play third base every day. We saw him taking ground balls at third base. I think it would be like a pretty meteoric rise, but one thing that they like about Austin Martin is the fact that they think he can complement this core. So I think that there's like an outside possibility that we do see him.
I think the thing working against Martin is the fact that, same situation as everybody else in baseball, but his college season got cut short as well. It's been a really long time before he had really been playing any kind of competitive ball at all until he got up here for summer camp. So he's a bit behind the eight ball when it comes to that. So I think if it was another year, I think potentially we could be talking about him as a guy who would come up in September, especially if the Jays were actually in it. Maybe you would find a piece. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think things would have to really go kind of sideways, but we've seen things go sideways with this roster before, so you can never completely rule it out. But I would think at some point way through next year is kind of when you're going to see him.
All right. So one more under the Blue Jays bucket here. So player most likely to exceed expectations.
I think it's going to be Bichette. I think that Gregor's absolutely right. This guy walked into spring training and summer training and just like owned the place. And I think it's wild to say that you expect Bichette to exceed expectations because he was great last year and he's been great basically ever since he's been in this organization. But I think that he's going to surprise people, not necessarily at the plate, but I think he's going to surprise people in the field too. Like you watched him in Boston last night. He looked good. He looks even in better shape than he was last year somehow. And I think that he's going to be the kind of guy that like surprises not only with his play, but with his leadership and the way that he runs this team.
It's hard for me to single out one person, and to be honest with you, there's a piece I'm writing for the Star today about kind of talking about how streaky the Blue Jays outfield in particular is. All those guys are boom or bust type players. Randall Grichuk, Teoscar Hernandez, even Lourdes Gurriel Jr. with the injuries he's had. There's been half seasons where they put up numbers where they're basically all-stars, and then the other half of the season they completely disappear and are below replacement level players. So I think someone from that group, one of those three streaky guys, is going to get hot. And if you get hot for 4 weeks, that's the difference between being an all-star and being kind of a guy who has trouble finding himself a way into the lineup. So again, I probably would pick Teoscar Hernandez. I'm not really sold on that, but I think one of those three is going to have a big year. And ultimately, I think how that outfield does is going to determine how good the Blue Jays are this year.
All right. Okay, guys. So we're going to go. Let's make this part quick so that we can get to some fan questions. All right. So this one, just give me a quick answer, just a team name or a player, and we'll go through your predictions for the league this season. So first, AL East champion.
Am I first on this?
Yeah, you can go first.
I'm going Astros.
All right, Gregor?
Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh.
Let's go with.
I like that.
Let's go with best record in baseball.
Best record I'm gonna go with Astros again.
Okay. Gregor?
I'm gonna say the Dodgers will have a better record than the Rays.
All right. Worst record in baseball.
I am like having a hard time picking between like Baltimore and Detroit, but I'm gonna go Baltimore. I think Baltimore is gonna be terrible.
I agree. I'm picking Baltimore too, especially now that they might have to share space with the Jays.
AL MVP.
Trout.
Yeah, I think you pretty much have to pick Trout every year.
Yeah, big bet. NL MVP?
NL MVP. Acuna, I think.
Nice.
That's what they all go.
I'm gonna say Mookie Betts because I'm picking Dodgers for most of my NL stuff this year. So I figure best player from the team that I think is going to do the best.
Okay, AL Cy Young.
I think I'm gonna go with Garrett Cole.
Gregor?
Yeah, I'd probably say the same. I mean, the season's going to be a crapshoot, but I would say, I mean, safest pick for sure.
Yeah.
Cy Young?
I think I'm gonna go Dodgers on this one and go with Bueller. Bueller? Yeah. Let's do it.
Straight out of the movie, Bueller.
I've never seen that movie. Is that weird?
It's very weird. I watched it last week.
Okay,
for the NL Cy Young, I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, I think Soroka maybe could have another chance. I don't think he's actually going to be the guy. I think ultimately Bueller's probably a good pick as well. I mean, it's an interesting one. I certainly Soroka is going to be someone I'm going to be keeping an eye on this year because I'm interested to see how he follows up last season in a shortened year.
Okay, I'm going to lock you in for Soroka then. All right, World Series matchup and winner and MVP.
World Series matchup for me is going to be Yankees-Dodgers. I don't think that the Astros will get there. I think the Dodgers will take it, and I think Betts could be the MVP.
All right.
I'm not going too different. I'm going Dodgers. I'll actually go. No, you know what else? No, I'm going to stick with what I said. I'm going to pick Dodgers over Rays. For a second, I was going to pick Rays over Dodgers, but I'm going to pick Dodgers over Rays and stick with Mookie Betts as the MVP.
I wish you would have. Okay, cool. That was awesome. So we'll lock those in, and then I'll bug you about them at the end of the season. Okay, so we're going to get into a couple fan questions before we wrap up, and then we'll save the rest of the questions for whenever it is we do this again. So, Gregor, first question is for you. It's from Ryan Bennett. Has there been any talk or whispers from the front office about Vlad Jr.'s conditioning, and how can they work on that?
There's been a lot of talk. I don't know how much progress there's actually been, but there's certainly been a lot of talk. I mean, it's been one of the most dominating points of conversation over the last 2 years, especially going into the spring. We heard, all the work that Vladdy did over the offseason to lose weight, come into camp in better shape. And then we arrived in spring training, and the difference was not all that noticeable. I mean, I think he did lose some weight. How much exactly he lost is kind of up for debate. But a little bit more concerning is him coming back into summer camp, and I think he looked more like the guy he did last year. And so I think this is just a reality of the situation. I mean, the Blue Jays can't force him in the offseason to do specific things. They can only make recommendations. They can send him the resources, but ultimately this is up to Vladdy. I think trying to keep him at third base as long as they try to played a role in that, but obviously they've given up on that with moving him over to first base. I mean, I think with his body type, just the way things are, I mean, I think this is just something that Blue Jays fans are going to have to get used to. And that's not the end of the world because, I mean, Vladdy came up here because of his bat. And as long as he hits, everything else is going to be fine. But I think you're definitely looking at a guy who, if he achieves what he can, would be more kind of the Miguel Cabrera type. Someone who's not all that athletic and who doesn't provide a ton of defensive value all over at first base.
Cool. Great answer. Thanks, Gregor. Okay, Laura. So this question is from Ivan Shotsky. Ivan, I hope I said that right. He says, do you guys expect Brandon Drury to have a role with the team this season and into the future?
I think this season we'll see him. We haven't seen him yet. So Brandon Drury has kind of been we haven't seen him. He didn't reach Toronto. We didn't see him join the team in Boston. So there's obviously speculation that perhaps he was one of the people who was either infected or came into contact with COVID-19, then didn't travel here. And we're not really sure where Brandon Drury is at right now. And it's not a great time for that to happen to Brandon Drury. I think for the last couple of years, we've basically said, like, maybe this is the year that he finds some sort of regular playing time, but he really hasn't been able to do that. And the thing is that every year that he allows other people to come up and other players who are versatile to play into this roster, then Brandon Drury loses a step for sure. I mean, he's never really shown with his bat that he deserves to be in the Blue Jays lineup. He's a good defender. He's a versatile player. He can play across the infield. He can play in the outfield. But they have a lot of players now who are versatile defenders who can play in the infield and the outfield and who can actually hit. So Brandon Drury is just losing steps sort of every season, I think. He doesn't really complement this young core, maybe as a backup option if they really want to keep him around. But I think that, he would have a better, for Brandon Drury, it would be better for him to go find, a greener pasture and see if he can figure his way into a different team, because I just don't see an avenue for him to get onto the Jays.
All right, cool. Thanks, Laura. So I think that's time to wrap it up. Recess is over. That's kind of cheesy, but I had that in my notes to say that. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I know we'll probably do it again soon. You can follow Laura on Twitter at Laura Army, and Gregor is at Gregor Chisholm. Stay tuned to thestar.com for tons of baseball coverage all season long, and thanks everyone for watching.